So in the previous video, we talked about objects and we saw how objects are able to hold values and assign some sort of label to those values. In this video, we are going to see how objects are passed by reference, and I hope we will be able to understand what do I mean when I say that objects are passed by reference by the end of this video. So in order to understand this concept, I prepared a file, and in this file, I have declared an object which holds a property I and n with the values am, string, and object string. And of course, this is I am an object. And I assigned the value of object A to object B, and then I declared an object C, which is identical to the object A. In fact, if we console log each of the objects here, we will see that those objects are all equal. But if we try to console log the output of object A is equal to object B, so we are asking for an equality, and object A is equal to object C, we do see that the first is true, so object A is in fact equal to object B, but the second is false, so node thinks that object A is different than object C, even if we can clearly see that all the three objects do have the same values with the same properties, so we can say that those are equal. But then why only A and B are equal but not A and C? Well, here comes the reference. In fact, we created object B from object A, and what I'm saying here is that object B is the exact same object of object A. So both object A and object B are this object here, and object C is another object with the same properties and values, but another object which is not this one, and we can see that object B and object A are actually the same identical object, since I could only try to modify the I property of the object A. We see that before modifying the object A, the three objects were all the same, but when I modified the object A and only the object A, two objects are changed, and those two objects are the object A, and this was expected since we are in fact modifying the I of object A, but also the object B was modified, and this is because when assigning object A to object B, as we said before, we are telling to object B to hold the same identical object of the object A, and notice how declaring a different object for object C did created a new different object, and we can tell this since the I property of this C object has not changed, since it is a totally different object than this one. Now, if we want to copy in a certain way an object inside another object, we could use the object.assign function and put here an empty object, and here the object we want to copy inside this object, and as a result we will get a new object that has the same properties of the object that we provide as a second argument. And by running the program, we see that we print the four object here, and those are equal. Then we modify the A object, and only the A and the B are changed since the B, as we saw, is assigned by reference. But the D has not changed since you can imagine the D object as being this object here, in which we copied the properties. But be careful, since if we have here, say, an object, right? If we have an object here, then this will be passed through by reference. So it is true that object D will have a new object, but if it is if inside the object A there is another object or an array or whatever is passed by reference, then that would be the same, since we are just copying. So this is something to keep in mind when using object assign. We are copying, in fact, the property names and the values, and we are doing that as by using the equal operator. So we are reassigning to new properties of new object the same values. And so if there is some values that is passed by reference, that would be the same object, and that means that it can be modified from somewhere else. Now we can achieve a very similar result of object assign by using the spread operator with an object, and we saw the spread operator with arrays. We can use the same spread operator, which are three dots, with object only if inside an other object, and also in this case values will be copied. In any case, by running the program, we first print the 5 objects we created before to see that those are all equals. Then we modify the A object, and then we see that both the object assigned and the spread operator created from object A have not changed, even if B has changed, because it's pointing to the same object. So to have a better idea of the assignment by reference to of an object to another object, I've defined two function here in the console, one called modify value. It takes any value and then sets that value to 42, and one called modify ref that takes an object and then accesses a ref property of whatever object we passed and sets the ref property to 69 and then exits the function. So here I have defined two variables, one called myVal, which simply holds a number 2, and one called myObj, which holds an object with a ref property, and this property has a value of a string. Now, if I try to see the value of my val, it is of course 2, and if I try to call modify val and passing my val as an argument, and then try to recheck the value of my val, we see that it has not changed, even if we set it here, whatever we pass to my val to 42, the value of my val is not changed, since numbers are simple values, and actually a copy of those values is passed inside the function. So we are not modifying the actual my val, but we are modifying a copy of my val, in this case a copy of 2. So when we pass here my val, here there is a 2, and then we just change the new 2 to 42, and my val has never changed. If we see the content of my obj, we see that now it holds a property, and that property has a value of a string. And if I call modify ref, which takes an object and accesses the ref property of an object and sets that property to 69, if I call this with argument myObj, and then we try to check what is inside myObj, we see that the value of ref is changed, because by passing myObj inside my ref, what we are doing here is actually obj, which is the parameter, equal myObj. And we saw here that this access the same identical object of my object. So any change made to the ref property of whatever object we post is also a change that we make to the object itself. And also, as a side note, note that if we pass my ob to modify val, which takes whatever value and sets the value to 42, if we pass here my object and then we check what's inside my object, then my object is not changed, since what we were trying to do here is to modify the object itself and not a property of the object. And in that case, the object itself is just a value. And then if here we change object A with 2, then object A no more holds the object, so it no more holds a reference but a different value. And we actually can see this in action if I try to modify the object A itself, not one of its property, then the object A is just a variable, so it can very well change the value it holds. And if we now run the program, we see that, of course, the first five, everything is equal. Then we modify the I property and also the B changes. Then we assign 2 to the variable that held that object. And what happened is that only A, so the variable, changed its value, but not B, since B is still holding the whole object. So references are definitely not a simple argument at first, but once you start playing with them, it's more clear how do they work. In any case, thank you for your time. If you liked the video, consider to subscribe to the channel and also do not forget to like the video. And I hope to see you in another video. Bye bye.